Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check today's video out. And guys, today I want to share with you some extensive genius bass fishing advice that I've learned over the years. And I don't claim to know everything in bass fishing. I don't claim to be the best bass angler, but I've been doing it for a long time, and I've learned a lot from fishing with other anglers. So what I wanted to do today in the video, guys, I sort of want to have this really chill, laid-back conversation on some things that I've learned from people that have really helped me become a better angler. There are experiences that I've had over the past 50 years fishing with a lot of different people that the little tidbits of info that I gained from them were just like gold nuggets. And I've been able to take some of that information and sort of tweak it and use it myself and develop some different stuff. But sort of just want to have a wide-ranging discussion on that today, and I can assure you, if you hang with me through this entire video, you're going to come out of it a better angler and have some better success as a result of it. Also, guys, real quick, I just wanted to give everybody a big thank you, everybody out there that's been supporting Intuitive Angling by subscribing to the channel. You guys that have been channel members, hitting that like button, sharing the videos, using all the links I put in the description. If you're one of the viewers that have been, actively participating in that, big thank you from me and my family, and I'd like to invite everybody to do the same if you're inclined to do so. Really appreciate it. Okay, I sort of want to start from like some of my earliest memories, and then I want to just move up to here recently and some things that really stand out of my mind about experiences I've had that they stayed with me. It's like, I have spent tens of thousands of days on the water in 50 years, guys. And the things that I'm going to talk about today, out of all those thousands and thousands of days bass fishing, I don't remember most of them, but these particular incidents, they stood with me because they've allowed me to just become such a better angler all the way around. So anyway, some of the first things I learned about bass fishing, one of the big things is patience. It's like you have got to cultivate patience in bass fishing. If you do not cultivate patience, you're never going to be a good angler. Bass fishing is a game of patience. And one of the things beyond that is a lot of people don't really have it seems like they don't have the discipline to be patient. So a couple different exercises that will help you that I learned from some of the old masters about some of these old guys I fished with back in my bass club back in the day. This was back in the 70s, and these guys were in their 60s back in the 1970s, World War II veteran type guys. But patience is something that you have to immerse yourself in the moment. It's like if you try to, if you're fishing and you're trying to thinking about where your next stop is or where your next cast is, you can't fully focus on what you're doing at the time. Because in bass fishing, it's like by the end of the day, it's like if you truly fish the moment and you're constantly in the moment and you're fishing, it's sort of mentally exhausting. Because let me give you an example of what I really try to do when I'm fishing. It's like I'll make a cast out there. So as soon as I make that cast, from the time that lure hits the water until the time that I get that lure back to my rod tip, I'm constantly focusing and thinking about what that bait is doing. I'm trying to visualize that bait coming off of, bouncing off of objects, or, trying to get a feel for it. But above all, I'm anticipating a strike every single cast. It's like every cast that I make, I'm expecting to get a strike or expecting to get a bite. And if you do this and you focus on that, that's a great exercise in patience, because you're totally in that particular cast there. And along with patience is fishing at the right pace, because a lot of times people have a natural tendency to speed up when they're fishing if they're not catching fish. And that's just sort of something, if it's not working, you tend to make more cast, you tend to get your trolling motor running faster, and always dial it back. It's like when you find yourself getting out of the flow, or you find yourself getting frustrated, or you find yourself getting impatient, just slow down. Or anything that you're doing, just slow your presentations down, slow your in the boat movements down, and just really focus on breaking apart the piece of structure that you're fishing. So just work on patience in a big way. Next thing with that, guys, one of the things that I've learned that separates so many good bass anglers from anything else is your casting skills. Now, this is something that is like so obvious that most people don't even think about it. But guys, there is a huge difference between being able to put your lure right where you want it and being able to put your lure close to where you want it. It makes all the difference in the world. Let me give you guys an example. If you're throwing, let's say we're fishing isolated laydown trees with a spinnerbait. If you don't put that spinnerbait exactly where you want it, and it's that far away from the limb, instead of that far away from the limb, you're probably not going to get hardly any bites at all. It's like you have got to be able to hit your target every single time with that. And the difference between somebody that goes out there and hits their target 90-95% of the time versus somebody that hits their target 50% of the time, that makes all the difference in the world. That makes the difference between catching 30 fish a day and catching 5 fish a day. And this does not get talked about enough. You do not hear people talking about casting, or you don't hear people practicing casting. I can assure you guys, if there's one thing that you could do throughout the course of a year, unless you're a spotlighter and you don't have to have any casting accuracy along with any fish finding skills, if there's one thing that you can do is if you practice and get better at your casting, you're going to see a direct correlation in how many more fish you catch. That's one of the things I learned very early on, because I didn't have any money when I was young to fish. It's like I had to wade creeks, but what I could do was I could practice casting. It didn't cost me anything, and I got good at it. And I wound up winning the Bass Pro Shop National Casting Competition. Won it one year, finished second the other year, simply because I realized how important that is. Now, let me give you one more example on this. Let's say, for example, I go down to Walmart and I pick out 2 random dudes in there. One guy has never even held a fishing rod their whole life, doesn't even know what a largemouth bass is. And then there's another guy in there that knows all about bass and he loves to bass fish, but he can't cast worth a dang. It's like for whatever reason, he's just a terrible caster. Guys, I could take the person out there that has never held a fishing rod, and I could spend a whole day with them, and I could teach them how to cast, and I could teach them how to cast accurately. We could go out the next day with both of those guys, and I can assure you the dude that didn't even know what a bass is, they will catch 10 times more fish than the guy that knows all about bass but can't cast at all, especially fishing around targets. So don't ever underestimate that. Next thing, a couple different things, guys, we'll keep going on this, that is really important as far as just some of the genius of the guys I fish with. And I've learned this from fishing with guys like Larry Nixon, Rick Clunn, and Denny Brower, guys I've drawn out in tournaments, is you have to learn how to read the potential that the area that you're fishing has. This is another big thing that sets your success, apart, or experiencing less or more of it, is when you roll up on a spot and you decide to pick a place to fish, you have got to accurately read the potential of that area to understand not only how much time to fish there, but the techniques to use on that. Because a lot of times I've seen people that they spend way too much time on an area that just does not have the potential, and they don't spend enough time on areas that have huge potential. Now, the areas that have big potential are the ones that usually have a diversity of cover. It's got some type of significant amount of cover in whatever form it is on the lake. It could be a grass bed, it could be lily pads, it could be a bunch of boat docks, it could be a lot of riprap, but there's a lot of cover, and there's also some proximity to deep water around that cover. Not super close to it, but somewhat nearby. If you have an area that has a lot of cover in it, and you've got some deep water access, through that area, those areas have a lot of potential to hold big groups of fish. But if you are in an area that doesn't have much cover in it and doesn't have a lot of deep water access to it, your potential for catching a lot of fish goes way down the tube. And that's just two extremes with it. But you have to learn how to read potential of an area is really critical thing, and that just comes from time on the water. Next thing along with that, some things that I've really learned a lot, and again, I learned this, a lot of it from Rick Clunn and Larry Nixon when I fished with them, is that your casting angles are almost as critical as your casting skills. Casting angles are huge when you're fishing around targets, because when you're talking about what generates a strike from a bass, there's a lot of things that generate a strike from a bass. It's the type of lure that you're using, the color of lure, the profile of that lure, it's the cadence or the speed of retrieve that you're bringing that lure in. It could be one thing, it could be a multiple factor of different stuff. But one thing about that is that casting angles, how your lure comes down a particular target, that makes a huge difference sometimes, especially when it comes to maximizing. Because let's say, for example, you're fishing a main lake point, and when most people run up to a main lake point, they're just casting from shallow water, bringing it out to deep, or maybe they fan cast across the point. But how many people have thought about getting their boat up super shallow on the point and casting out into deep water? That's a different angle. It's like if you come up to a boat dock or something, or any piece of cover in the water, a log that's in the water, a lot of times the way that your lure comes down the side of that dock or comes down the side of that lay down tree will determine if you're going to get a fish or not. And that can be determined by factors like shade, wind, the cover that's under the water that you can't see. So one of the good things that you can do with that is when you get around targets, try to hit those targets at a lot of different angles. And eventually, a lot of times you're going to hit on the right angle and get that fish to bite that wouldn't bite just on the first or second cast with that. And that's another thing that goes along with it as far as, multiple presentations. Another thing I've learned a lot from guys is that, when there's a fish around a piece of target, some type of a cover, a lot of times your first or second or third cast, you're not going to get that fish to bite. Sometimes you have to make 20 or 30 casts to that piece of cover, to generate that strike with it. Because a lot of times this happens on lakes that have a lot of heavy fishing pressure, or maybe after a cold front when the fish are inactive. Sometimes multiple presentations, have a lot to do with it with that. Another thing is fishing pressure. Fishing pressure has a huge impact on fish. Fishing pressure has just as big of an impact on bass as radical weather changes or something, because fishing pressure the lack of fishing pressure can make the fish more active. A lot of fishing pressure or boat traffic on the water can make them inactive. One thing you can do with that, guys, if you're on a lake that has a lot of fishing pressure, or the fishing's tough, or there's a lot of noise decibels, a lot of boats running around, is go to small finessey stuff and fish on the bottom. Little Ned rig, shaky heads, finesse jigs, Texas rig worms, that's always going to be better, because on areas that have a lot of fishing pressure, the bass don't want to chase as much, and they tend to hunker closer to cover and on the bottom, and also they are a lot more susceptible to biting smaller lures than other type of things. Another thing's weather, guys. Weather has a huge impact on the fish. I mean, it's when you're talking about the light intensity, the cloud cover, heavy clouds, light clouds, sunny conditions, whatever, wind direction that you have, those all have impacts on the fish. They all, cause those bass to bite different. And the thing about weather is that there's not one definitive thing that the fish do under different type of weather conditions, because the type of weather that you have varies so much. You can have a north wind at 20 miles an hour on a clear sky. You can have a north wind at 10 miles an hour on a cloudy sky. You can have a south or southwest wind, with a rising or falling barometric pressure. There's a limitless amount of variables with that. But one of the things in general that you're going to find out about fishing is that if you have a southerly or westerly airflow on the lake that you're fishing, and you have any type of significant cloud cover, that makes the bass really active, and they want to chase lures. So your lures that are larger and move horizontally through the water column, like spinnerbaits and chatterbaits and crankbaits, are always better during prefrontal conditions. And on the opposite end of that, if you have a north wind or northwest wind with a rising barometric pressure and a lot of light intensity, again, a lot of times those fish don't want to chase a bait, and your slower bottom bouncing lures are going to work a little bit better. So it's a literally just an endless line of things that, you know, are considerations out there. That's why bass fishing is the most difficult sport in the entire world, simply because of those variables. But that's just a few guys that come to the top of my mind. That's some of the genius that I have learned from people, you know, over years, and tried to incorporate in my own fishing. Great thing about fishing, another thing, is the fact that the creativity and ingenuity is more important than experience to a large degree. So if you have an idea to try something that may be unique and nobody else has tried, always act upon that, because that's how new techniques are developed all the time, about people trying a color that other people don't try, or trying different type of areas. You know, it should really give you a lot of confidence and a lot of peace and a lot of you know, lot to look forward to in your own fishing, even if you don't know as much about fishing as what you think. Is just let your imagination and creativity go free when you're fishing. Try stuff that's off the wall a little bit. Try weird colors. Try this and that. And most of the time, guys, bass react to things that they haven't seen better than they have to other variables. I have seen many, many times where, you know, some custom painted color that a bass has never seen before, because you can't buy it at any retail store, just kills them. So, you know, always remember that. That's a big part of it too. And main thing, guys, when you get out there is just relax, man. Just chill out, relax, enjoy being out in nature. You know, use fishing for the therapeutic, you know, healing properties that it has. That is the magic behind fishing, is when you go out there and you consume and you absorb and you immerse yourself in the natural world along with fishing. There's so many benefits to it besides just actually catching a fish. So anyway, just a few random thoughts, guys. I hope you're well. We'll talk later.